Hi guys! Over the last 4 years there's been a lot of tearing things apart here aboard Athena. There was the whole rotten deck core replacement, the very extensive osmosis treatment, and of course gutting most of the interior of the boat, just to name a few. But today I get to put one of the big pieces of the puzzle back in place. Last year I patched a ton of holes in the fiberglass Dodger. I also faired it and painted it. So beneath all of the dust that you might be able to see here, it should look pretty dang spiffy. Like any cooking show worth its salt, I've done a little bit of prep work. You might be able to see a bunch of little dots here on the cabin top. I drilled some oversized holes and then I filled those holes with thickened epoxy. To make the fiberglass Dodger nice and sturdy, I'm going to through bolt it through the cabin top. And I'm going to do that by drilling smaller holes in each of these little plugs here. This way, if I get any kind of leak, the balsa core that's inside of the cabin top is nice and protected. Let's get this back in place and drill some holes. As you can see, all of the stuff that came out of the holes is nice and white. That's because it's thickened epoxy and not balsa core. So far, so good. I've masked off around the Dodger up on deck, so we're all ready to start putting down some bedding compound. And for that, I'm going to be using Sikaflex 591. Now I hear a bunch of you screaming, "Beautiful!" right now. But just like a hammer is not always the right choice for a tool, butyl is not always the right choice for sealant. Along the bottom inside edge here, whatever I use as a bedding compound is going to be visible. Now butyl's big upside is that it remains tacky basically forever. So if I used butyl in here, then I'd end up with a bunch of dirt and grime just stuck in here. Sikaflex 591 is apparently the replacement for 291, and I have no idea why they've made this switch, but I've always had good luck with the old version, so I'm hoping this stuff is just as good. 591 is only going to give me a light adhesive bond, but that's fine. The fiberglass Dodger is through bolted, so I'm not really looking for a lot of strength. As you can see, I've used some stir sticks to raise the fiberglass Dodger off of the cabin top. I've done that to limit the amount I have to move the thing after I've put down the bedding compound. As I'm lowering the fiberglass Dodger down in place, I'm using some of the bolts to just guide it in and make sure it doesn't move around. It looks like I've got plenty of goop in there, so now I just need to get the bolts in there. Tightening the bolts is going to be a little bit of a pain because I can't reach the top and the bottom at the same time. I'll leave this wedged up against the side of the Dodger and then I can tighten it from down below. I'm going to have to do this quick, so I hopefully have time to clean up on the outside. This is not good. The 591 has cured way too much for me to be able to shape it, so now we are in damage control mode. Things got a little bit frantic, but at least here on the inside it kind of worked out. It's not too horrible to look at. Here on the outside things are looking a little bit more messy, but I should be able to clean this up with a razor blade and then put down a new bead to hide my sins. Tomorrow it's supposed to rain, so I'd love to get the windows installed today. Now for these I am going to use butyl, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. Before I install the windows, I want to drill the holes for the hatch cover. I've already faired and primed the cover, so it's basically ready for paint. This looks fairly well lined up to me, so let's go ahead and mark those holes. I'm also going to through bolt the cover, not because of strength, but because it's a good way of protecting the balsa core. By the end of the day, the thickened epoxy should have cured enough that I can drill the holes through it. And that is important because I don't want to put in place the big window until I've got these holes drilled. For the windows in the Dodger, I am going to be using butyl, but not the tape. I'm going to be using the caulk, and I think I've got a little canister of it somewhere in here. Uh-oh. That was a blast from the past. I don't think Yoko has seen this thing for years, but the butyl should be in here. Oh, here it is. That took way longer than expected. I've spent the last roughly 5 hours just doing a test fit of each of the 3 windows. None of the holes really lined up, and there were some other issues, so yeah, there was a lot of fiddling about. But I finally have got a good fit, so let's go ahead and install those windows. Before I do anything else though, I need to remember to drill the holes for the cover. Even though the last 5 hours were pretty tedious, they did help me figure out that I think it's easiest for me if I start with the big window. Like I mentioned earlier, the big selling point for butyl is that it remains tacky or flexible basically forever, so at least today I don't have to worry about my timing. Fingers crossed I got that dry fit right, otherwise this is gonna be a goopy mess. And now comes the truly fiddly bit, and that is to get these strips of aluminum with barrel nuts in them actually attached. I'm not really loving these windows, to be honest. I give each of the little bolts here a dab of butyl before securing it. In case you're curious, there's 96 of these little screws securing these windows. The good news is I'm almost done cleaning up. I just need to do the big center window here. Cleanup is actually the easiest step in this entire endeavor. I'm just going to remove the bulk of the squeeze out with a stir stick. With the bulk of the butyl removed, I can also remove the masking tape. As you might be able to see, there is still a bunch of butyl stuck here in the corners, and of course that doesn't look very nice. Now this stuff is so sticky, if I start just wiping it with paper towels, it's just going to get smeared everywhere. But if I just apply a drop of this turpentine to the paper towel, the butyl is just going to wipe right off. Here's a little bit of a closer shot. Here you can see some of that butyl left, and as you can see it's pretty sticky and hard to remove, but here is that piece of paper towel with some turpentine on it. And the butyl is gone. Ta-da! Now I still need to clean the actual windows, but I think this is looking pretty dang spiffy. There's a fabric extension that attaches to the fiberglass dodger, so when you're sitting here you're really well protected. I think I've still got the old fabric one, but if memory serves, it's looking a little bit tattered, so it might be time to order a new one. The process I used for bedding the windows in the fiberglass dodger is the same process I used for the port lights in the cabin tub, and those have been leak proof for 2 years now. Of course it's different once the boat starts flexing, but we'll see what happens. Once I've stepped the mast, which is going to go right here, I will have to run a few lines aft into the cockpit, but I'm going to hold off on drilling the holes in the fiberglass dodger until I've figured out all of the running rigging. Today is a little bit cooler than yesterday, which is really nice. It is supposed to start raining later today, but that's okay. I think I've still got time to get in a little bit of oh glorious sanding. A few days ago I applied fairing compound to the top part of the deck hull joint. The hull part of the joint is basically done, so now all I need to worry about is the top and the radius. Unfortunately, the fairing compound got a little bit wet before it had fully cured, so there might be a little bit of a nasty surprise waiting for me here, but there is only one way to find out, and that is to start sanding. So far there are no nasty surprises hiding in here, but this is where I started out, so this section is the most cured. We'll see what happens when I get to the other side of the boat. Weather-wise, it's supposed to be nice and dry tomorrow, so if I get all of it sanded today, then I can apply another layer of fairing compound tomorrow. I finished sanding just seconds before it started raining, so that was really good timing. It was only the last 2 meters or so where there was an issue with the epoxy because it had gotten wet before it was fully cured, so I really lucked out there. I've been working on Athena for, I think it's 4 years now, and I feel like I've finally graduated from DIY college because I am now the proud owner of my very own TIG welding machine. This is not a fancy machine. It's very affordable. I think I paid somewhere around $350 for it. It is DC only, but it does have high frequency start and pulse. The machine should be a lot smaller than the box makes it look like, because the plan is to carry this aboard Athena. So I wanted to find something that was affordable because maybe the salt is going to kill it, we'll see. But I still wanted to have, for instance, high frequency start. And this is what I ended up choosing. I've got the almost perfect project for testing out the welder. This is going to turn into Athena's new fuel transfer manifolds. Size-wise, I think this looks pretty good. With this and a small 8-liter tank of argon, I can do repairs basically anywhere, even in a remote anchorage without any kind of shore power because of the electrical setup we'll have aboard Athena. So yeah, I think this is going to be pretty cool to have aboard. Let's get the torch connected and see if we can take the little guy for a spin. This thing is a lot noisier than the super fancy one Martin has here at the workshop, but it's okay. I wasn't going for super fancy, I was going for affordable. Well, I think it works. The fuel transfer manifolds is how we're going to transfer diesel from one tank to another or recirculate the diesel in one tank while polishing it. It's just a bunch of fittings and some square tubing. Of course, I'm going to have to close up the ends of the square tubing. I've cut some little pieces of stainless for that. And we're also going to have to weld on some of these doohickeys here for attaching the fittings. So yeah, this should be a cool little welding project. I am in no way an expert welder, and as you've just seen, this machine is very new to me. So there is a chance I'm going to make a right mess of this, but let's just give it a go. Not the prettiest welds ever, but I don't think we can blame all of that on the machine. There is one annoying issue, and that is that there's a leak somewhere. You might even be able to see the needle here moving. Now, if I disconnect this quick coupling here, the needle stops. I am pretty sure this is my fault. I don't think I've tightened this enough. Nope, that wasn't the culprit. The needle is still dropping. Maybe it's the quick coupling, or maybe it's something inside of the machine or in the torch. I will consult with my welding instructor tomorrow. Good morning, guys. The mystery of the leaking argon has been solved. Turns out there was a leak inside of the machine, so I opened it up, tightened a few doohickeys, and presto, no more argon leak. I then proceeded to take care of the bulk of the welding for the fuel manifolds. Turns out I am missing a couple of fittings to be able to finish the fuel manifolds, so that is going to have to wait until next weekend. I need a pressure gauge for up here. The one I got was not the one I ordered, and then I need some kind of pressure relief between the return and the transfer manifolds. The way this works is down here you choose which tank you want to suck diesel out of, and then up here you choose which tank you want to deposit that diesel into. And then between the two of these there's going to be a pump and a giant fuel filter and water separator. With this setup I can take diesel from any tank and deposit it to any tank. And that means I can, for instance, take diesel from this tank here in the galley and deposit it back to this tank here in the galley, essentially polishing the fuel through the filter. My plan is to mount the fuel manifolds somewhere in here in the technical compartment. I will only need to access them about every other month during the winter because of the diesel we're consuming for heating. So yeah, they don't need to be super accessible. I've already got all of the fuel hose for connecting up this tank here, and I've also ordered the NMEA 2000 tank sensor. So next week, hopefully we can get some of this put together and get the kitchen island back in place. Because I was a little pressed for time when I was bedding the fiberglass Dodger, I didn't seal around the heads of the bolts up there. And that has caused a leak. I saw it yesterday when it was raining. This is the amount of water that came in through just one of those holes that were leaking. Because I took the time to seal each of the holes with thickened epoxy before bedding the fiberglass Dodger, there's absolutely no risk to the core in the cabin tub. And that is awesome. Now I can just go ahead and loosen each of the bolts and just apply a little bit of butyl tape around the head, and that should be watertight. I've loosened this little guy here from down below, so now I'll just take a thin little strip of butyl and wrap that around the head and tighten him back down, and he should be waterproof. If you look close, you can see some butyl squeezing out here, so yeah, I expect no more leaks from this guy. Now there's just the rest of them left. I've rebedded every single one of these bolts, and it is supposed to rain later today, so we'll see. Fingers crossed for no more leaky. The tape on here was just to make sure that I didn't miss any of these, so I can go ahead and remove that now. I've ordered more 591 so I can beautify the forward edge of the fiberglass Dodger because it's looking pretty right now. Now, because it's going to rain later today, I can't apply more fairing compound to the deck hull joint or the outside of the boat, but I can still get this area faired. My glassed butt joint here turned out to be just a little bit proud of the surface. I think the easiest thing here to do is just to knock it down a little bit and fair it. And then tomorrow, when the fairing compound is cured, well, perhaps we can go ahead and get all of this primed. I don't care that much how this looks because the stove is going to cover most of this. You're not going to be able to see it, but I don't want there to be any little sharp corners or edges where grease can start accumulating, or even worse, somewhere you can cut your fingers while cleaning. In a previous video, I primed and painted all of the plywood that makes up the back of this little area, so now it is just a matter of getting it glued and screwed in place. For now, I'm gonna leave this unattached because I might have to run some of the cables for the electric oven and the induction cooktop through here. Although I think it's better to run them from over here, but I don't want to limit my options. As you can see, there are some gaps in here. It's looking kind of shabby, but a few fillets will beautify this right away. I've mixed up a little bit of epoxy thickened with 407. This is the exact same stuff I'm using for the deck hull joint. I think it's easiest if I take care of the fillets back here first and then worry about this section afterwards. Otherwise, I'm going to be smearing this stuff all over myself. This does look a little bit messy right now, but a quick bit of sanding once the fairing compound has cured and it'll look like $1,000,000. It is a beautiful Danish summer Sunday, meaning lots of rain. In fact, it's been raining all night long, and there's not a single drop of water inside of the boat. Fiberglass Dodger install done. The fairing compound has cured overnight, and I would be hard pressed to find a better way of ending this video than by doing a little bit of glorious sanding. There are some areas in here that would require just a little bit more work to bring it up to an 11 on the spiffiness scale. But like I've said, the gimbal box is going to be covering all of this. So yeah, I think this is good enough. For a while, I considered lining that stove area with some stainless steel, but I chose not to go that route because that's just going to be an added expense, and it's going to be sharp corners that are going to be more difficult to clean, and there's not really any need for that stainless steel there. So I'm just going to go with some paint, and that paint is going to be Sigma Duo 520, the same stuff I've used for the rest of the hidden spaces in the interior of the boat. That's a very hard wearing paint that will easily be able to scrub and keep clean. Today is Sunday, so I'll only have time to apply the first coat of primer this week. This looks perfectly acceptable to me. Now once that first coat of primer has cured, well, then I'm going to have to come back and knock that back down because the grain of the wood is going to rise and that's going to cause a very rough surface. But after I've done that and another coat of primer, well, then we should be ready for top coat. I think I might be able to get the gimbal box complete with the electric oven and the induction cooktop installed next week. That is very exciting. The NMEA 2000 tank monitor for the galley diesel tank should show up Monday or Tuesday. And I've already got all of the fuel hoses, so that means next week we should also be able to run some of the plumbing to this and get the kitchen island back in place. Last but certainly not least, I do still have the deck hull joint to contend with. I am very much at the mercy of the weather for that, but as soon as the weather is nice, I am going to be working on that because getting that faired is the only thing standing between me and painting the hull. Next week's video should be a fun mix of some different stuff with the installation of the gimbal stove, the plumbing for the diesel tank, and also of course some oh glorious sanding. So I hope to see all of you guys back here next Sunday. And yeah, that is gonna be the end of this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!